Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Holly Pritchard, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Jed Goggin. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Air Vice Marshal Benjamin Sleeman, Head of Air Force Capability, Royal Australian Air Force, and the accompanying international Five Eyes delegation. We also warmly welcome Flight Lieutenant Richard Caesar Thwaites, representing the Air Force Association, and the ACT Government Office for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Affairs delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Perth Modern School, Subiaco, Western Australia. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him in Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Group Captain John Raeburn Balmer, who was killed during the Second World War. John Balmer was known as Sam and was born on the 3rd of July 1910 in Bendigo, Victoria, to Catherine and Sydney Balmer. Growing up, John had two sisters, Maita and Catherine, and a brother Lee. His father was a prominent barrister and solicitor in the region. He died in 1938. John Balmer attended Scotch College in Melbourne. Like his father before him, he went on to study law at University of Melbourne, where he was also on the rowing team. He joined the Royal Australian Air Force Reserve as a cadet on the 19th of December 1932 and was commissioned the following April. He transferred from the Citizen Air Force to the Permanent Forces that November. As a flight lieutenant in 1935, he served 2 years as an instructor with No. 1 Flying Training School at Point Cook, Victoria, where he was known as an exacting but imaginative instructor. The folklore goes that he once parachuted from a training aircraft in order to motivate his student to follow his example on a solo jump. Balmer was a keen racing motorist. In July 1936, he made a record-breaking trip from Darwin to Adelaide, taking 9 hours off the existing record. That same year, he knocked 17 hours off the Perth to Melbourne record. 2 years later, with Richard Kent, he drove around Australia in 23 and a half days, almost halving the reigning champion's time of 45 days. When war broke out in 1939, Balmer was an instructor with No. 3 Squadron at RAAF Station Richmond in New South Wales. In June 1940, he was promoted to squadron leader and made commander of the Darwin-based Reconnaissance Unit No. 13 Squadron, RAAF. The next year, he was made a wing commander and commanded No. 100 Squadron, RAAF, Australia's first Bristol Buford Squadron. In June 1941, he was awarded the Order of the British Empire. He then flew in New Guinea, commanding the first Australian Buford Torpedo Bombing Squadron. Here he gained further fame in June 1942 when his squadron, on its first mission, sank the Japanese freighter Tenyo Maru at Lee. In May 1943, Balmer was sent to Britain, where he took command of No. 467 Squadron, RAAF, Flying Lancasters. Over the following months, he flew raids over Germany and occupied France and Belgium. In April, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for courage and resolution of a high order in flying operations against the enemy. His citation said that he displayed great skill and devotion to duty, a most efficient squadron commander whose keenness and zeal have set a fine example. Promoted to temporary group captain, Balmer had now logged almost 5,000 hours of flying, matching the Royal Australian Air Force record set by Wing Commander Brian Walker. On the 9th of the 10th of May, 31 Lancaster bombers from RAAF Squadrons 463 and 467 took off in a major Royal Air Force raid on the heavily defended railway yard at Lille in France. The operation was costly, incurring 50 casualties. To shore up his men's morale, Balmer decided to lead the following night's attack on a military camp in Belgium. His aircraft failed to return to base, and he was later declared to have been killed in action. Another Australian, Flying Officer Peter Hammond, also died in the crash, as did British Airmen Flight Sergeants Barber, Connolly, Flying Officers Ward and Watson, Flight Lieutenant Morden Hare, and Sergeant Stevens. Witnesses said the aircraft had crashed around midnight, 2 kilometres west of the target. The 8 bodies of the crew were recovered by the Germans and buried at Sint-Truiden, some 30 kilometres to the south. After the war, the men were reinterred at Haverlee War Cemetery, and Balmer's remains lie there under the inscription, duty nobly done. Group Captain Balmer was 33 years old. His death was reported across Australia, and his Distinguished Flying Cross was presented to his mother by the Governor-General of Australia. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, along with some 40,000 others from the Second World War. His photograph is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Group Captain John Raeburn Balmer, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.